Welcome everyone to Defender for Cloud in the Field. We had a really great episode with Jamil last time talking about EASM, and this is almost like a follow-up because it's really part of the entire story, and this is about Defender for TI. But before I announce our guest today, I just want to say thanks for all the subscribers. Make sure, if you are not a subscriber yet, to use the link below to subscribe to our playlist at the Microsoft Security channel. But without further ado, I would like to welcome Alexandra Roland for this great episode. Alexandra, thank you very much for being on.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me, Yuri. I really appreciate it. So I'm a program manager within our cloud ecosystem security organization, specifically aligned to our Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence offering. So I'll help customers oftentimes with pre-sales conversations or deployments around their use cases to just help drive more adoption. Work closely with our product group too to make sure that any new features, feature requests specifically from our customers make their way into the product. So we officially launched on early August of this year. So we are still a relatively new product, but I'm excited to share with you all what our new offering is all about.
Yeah, well, great introduction. Thank you very much. Let's just start with the base question that I believe that is the question that most of the people that does not know about the product need to know, which is what is Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence?
Thanks so much, Yuri. Great question. So really what Defender TI does is it enables security analysts, could be from the SOC, triage analysts, incident responders, threat hunters, cyber threat intelligence analysts, as well as researchers to be able to either proactively defend their network using our threat intelligence or better respond to threats that are happening in real time. So there's a couple different use cases from that perspective, but really where we help analysts is it can be super cumbersome if you want to dive into an investigation to just gather all the passive DNS records, the WHOIS information, SSL certificates, different telemetry that's derived from the document object model of the different web pages that they're investigating, as well as, doing port scans as well to understand the banner responses and services that come back. So what we do is we help cut through the noise of just having to take the time to collect that data so that analysts can just drive in and start investigating. And there's different pivot points along those data sets that we provide in the platform that enables them to find other related indicators of compromise. So different IPs, domains, hosts that are related maybe to an entity that started in their incident, or maybe it's an indicator tied to an actor that they're profiling to better understand what they need to proactively block, monitor, or hunt within their network. And along the way too, they can see if these different indicators they're searching for are associated with any of our finished intelligence. So that could be different intelligence articles that we have, which are sourced from our OSINT crawlers, or from what our Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence researchers provide. A lot of times too, we get our threat intel from other security researchers within Microsoft, so organizations such as Mystic and Dart. So we're really trying to become like our TI powerhouse in a way with Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence.
Also, I think that the question, right, that a lot of customers they ask, mainly because this is Defender for Cloud in the field, is how Defender for Cloud leverage Defender TI feeds, and if it does, what are some of the use case scenarios? Can you give an overview about that?
Yeah, so we don't have a native integration with Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence with MDC directly. However, I think where we really enable MDC users is if they have an integration, let's say with our EASM offering, and they can see that one of their IPs is publicly exposed to the internet, they can see what hosts and domains resolve to that IP, or if they just want to dig into the IP itself, they can go into our offering and then try to proactively hunt for any potential threats that might go unnoticed, especially if it's in certain situations where maybe their customers might be impacted by a threat, where they don't have endpoint monitoring, obviously, on those customers' endpoints directly. So it basically is a way to safeguard their customers and then also just their own users as well, depending on what the use case is.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, there is something on Defender TI that is called reputation score. What it is, the reputation score, and how it works?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So anytime that you want to go and query an IP, a domain, or a host meaning like a subdomain, really, you have the ability to understand at a quick glance whether or not that indicator is good, bad, or otherwise. So there's different rules powered by our machine learning algorithm that kind of bake into that. So for example, we can see if the ASN associated tends to host malicious infrastructure. If the registrar frequently registers domains that are used for bad, or maybe the registrar is like a bulletproof hosting provider that won't do domain takedowns, things like that. If there's been evidence of a self-signed certificate. So there's a number of different rules. The other ones too that it factors in is if the indicator is actually included in one of our threat intelligence articles, and that has been added within the last 90 days. So it does kind of age out from that perspective.
But just to confirm, the intent of the reputation score is just to give a higher level of certainty that this is a true positive?
Yeah, it's mostly for triage. So whether you're first triaging, like you're going into an investigation, you want to see at a quick glance if it's good, bad, or otherwise. So really what it does is it allows for a quick gut check of the indicator severity before they do a deeper dive within all of our different data sets. So you'll see me throughout the demonstration here shortly show the reputation score of a couple of different indicators that I'll pull up to get a sense of what I'm talking about.
Got it. For customers that are interested in trying out Defender for TI, how can they do that?
Yeah, so we do offer a 30-day trial. So anyone that has access to the M365 Admin Center, if they go to the other section and type in Defender Threat Intelligence, you can opt in for a trial and then provision up to 5 different licenses. Now, if you aren't an admin of your tenant and don't know who that admin may be, we also offer an easy trial as well, which basically will then produce a tenant on the back end for you. So then you can hop in, you have the admin rights within our M365 Admin Center to go and do that provisioning. And so users can actually check out aka.ms/MDTI getting started, and that will link them out to a blog that details all of these instructions.
So is it correct to say that the prerequisite to have Defender for TI is you have a Microsoft 365?
No, not necessarily. It's its own standalone product right now. But if you do want to end up purchasing this, you will need to have an Azure tenant with a commercial subscription.
Okay, so it depends on the subscription. You need to have a subscription.
You need to have, a tenant subscription.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go through the demo.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Yuri. So one thing that I had mentioned earlier with Yuri is just about the ability to understand how your specific customers might be at risk of an attack themselves. So one thing that we're going to talk about today is how the MageCart threat actor group was able to implement a credit card skimmer within these 2 vulnerable websites. So if you want to envision, like if you were to own these domains yourself and go into the platform, I'm just going to kind of show you today how this attack was executed and how this is something that wouldn't go noticed just with a normal antivirus or malware scanner. And it might be a situation where your customers are impacted because the whole campaign was executed on the client side of their endpoints of their machines. So if we were to imagine that this is, that you own the IP as well as the domain that this resolves to, and see that the IP is part of your MDC environment, it's public facing because it's connected with EASM and it tells us as such, we can come in here and search matexbuyer.com, which is that domain. And then from there, I had mentioned the reputation score before. So we'll be able to see just at a quick glance what the severity is. Now this is your own domain, so we could go in and pivot off of this IP to learn a little bit more as to why the IP has a suspicious severity, which is causing this to ultimately be suspicious. But for all intensive purposes of the demo, we're just going to move ahead. This is our data tab, which will give us more defined data sets that we can look at to really kickstart our investigations. So this is based on all of the internet telemetry that we're mining on a regular basis. So passive DNS, we're capturing that daily, as well as all the other types of DNS and reverse DNS records, whois data, certificates that we're able to observe from our virtual user crawls, as well as our port scans, and then some of the other internet-derived telemetry, which are observed from the virtual user crawls, observing the document object model of all the pages that we crawl. So those would be data sets such as trackers, components, host pairs, cookies. And then if we were to have searched an IP address, we'd be able to see the different services running, the different ports, the statuses of those ports, and the banner responses that pull back. So all of this is captured on a regular basis and then updated into our platform every hour, so, or every day. So with that said, what I really wanted to hit on next is under the host pairs section. These are basically get and post requests that we observe when our crawlers will go through and execute a web crawl. So they'll click on all the different links within the document object model to really spider web out that crawl and get a lot of great metadata back. I'd mentioned the other data sets before, but host pairs are great because we can see how, you know, your domain in this case might be connected with other potential bad hosts. And that's the case for this www.matexbuyer.com. So we can see that it's actually referencing a script that's hosted by magento.name. And if we were to pivot on magento.name, we'll see that the malicious, that the reputation is malicious with a score of 100. And then one thing I pulled up right away is the fact that this indicator exists in 5 of our different threat intelligence articles. So I know right off the bat, just from looking at these, at the titles, that this is related to MageCart and a credit card skimmer being used. So I could drill into each of these, look at the other related indicators of compromise that I might want to block, monitor, as well as hunt across my network and get a better sense in terms of the details about the specific skimmer being used, who MageCart tends to target, and things like that. Now, if we switch back to our matexbuyer.com, we can actually see under the component section here that there's, you know, the components are basically all the infrastructure that's being used to stand up matexbuyer.com. And we can see that Magento was actually observed, and the time of this campaign was actually late last year. And so we can see that, you know, as of February 22nd, our crawlers had observed them using Magento. So it could very well be, since this actor group tends to exploit Magento and other e-commerce platform vulnerabilities, that that's how they were able to get access into their infrastructure and inject the script in the first place. I don't know that to be a fact, but that is something of interest that I found just going through this investigation. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with urlscan.io, it's a really great open source platform that allows organizations to see previous scans as well as perform new scans of websites, which will pull back like a screenshot of what the website looks like in real time. You can also see any like get and post requests, so similar to like the host pairs that we saw, but actually be able to see the specific files that were executed or that had failed throughout that crawl, the document object model, different components like we saw in MDTI. So this is one that I pulled up. It was a historical scan. And one of the things I wanted to highlight is if we go over to the document object model and then search for magento.name, we can actually see here that JavaScript host pair relationship like we saw in MDTI. But this actually tells us the name of the file and the folder path where this file specifically lives on this host, right? So one thing I can do with that is if I go to the HTTP get and post requests off of URL scan and go and search for that file, we can see if it was successfully ran or if it failed. In this case, we know that it failed at that time. And I'll come back to why that might be a little relevant in terms of hunting here in a minute. But let's move on and take a look at magento.name within MDTI. Here's one thing that we are able to see here. These are all of the different hosts that were popped by this MageCart actor. If they're not popped currently, they were at one point. So where we get blocked sometimes using URL scan or doing our own investigation using other tools is if the get call didn't successfully post, then it can be difficult, or didn't successfully run, then it can be difficult to find the binary hash to then be able to identify, other potential victims that have reached out to this specific file. But with MDTI from our crawlers, we can see just all the different hosts that at one point at least have connected with magento.name to get an idea in terms of whether or not they were victims of this MageCart threat actor group that wanted to steal credit card information from their users. And so if we pick on this uniforms.gtim.com, where it had an observed relationship with magento.name through late October of this year, and go and search their website and specifically drill into the source code, we can see here that that script file is still visible. And so even if you go through and you patch up all of your vulnerabilities associated with this site, the plumbing is still here. So the actor, like we saw with one of our crawls from URL scan earlier, where that mage.js get call wasn't successfully run, chances are the actor actually took that file down at the time of the crawl, but they could easily put that back up, and as long as it's within the same URL path, that site could be a victim again, in which case their customers would have their credit card information stolen at that time.
Well, that's very, very powerful, and I appreciate the time to go through all these steps. That's a really great end-to-end scenario. Thank you very much for that. Alexandra, I think this was a really good episode. I think it will bring a lot of clarity to our customers that they really don't know what Defender TI is. And using this opportunity also to let everyone know that we do have a Ninja certificate. The author of the Ninja is actually right here, Alexandra. She put together the whole thing. It's already available out there. I'm gonna put a link, the URL. Awesome. Any final consideration before we wrap up?
No, I'm excited for folks to have a chance to really dive into the product with the trial. The only other thing I forgot to mention is we do offer a freemium offering too. That kind of we brought that over from our Risk IQ Passive Total solution, which is our legacy product before we were acquired by Microsoft. So if you don't have the premium offering, it'll give you limited access to certain data sets, 14 days worth of history to the data sets you do have available, as well as the majority of our intelligence articles. But where you'll see the indicators under the public indicators tab, you won't have access to our Defender TI indicators. So if you want to play around outside of a trial, you have that option as well.
Great. Thank you very much again, Alexandra. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for interviewing me, Yuri. Appreciate your time as well.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing. Again, sharing the AKA for our playlist. And stay tuned. We have a lot more to come. See you next time.